I had sex with Cassie and Sean. I was like a sex slave, okay? For them, that's what I was. That's all right?
Jonathan Oddi, the man who was caught on surveillance allegedly shooting up a hotel in Florida, is soon expected to plead guilty. But it's his interview with investigators right after the incident that has thrust him even further into the international spotlight. We're taking another look at the demeanor of a man who insists he was Sean Diddy Combs' sex slave. And we will break it down with a body language expert. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. I'm not going to lie to you. Jonathan Oddi is a fascinating character. He really is. He has become quite the fixture in the Sean Combs saga, this alleged former stripper and male escort who was taken into custody in May of 2018 after he allegedly fired a gun inside of the Trump National Doral Miami Hotel and Resort in the middle of the night. The state attorney's office says that Oddi fired shots into the lobby and toward the chandelier, then draped a giant American flag across the front desk. He got into an apparent shootout with police officers before he was taken into custody. According to the Miami-Dade court, Oddi faces 10 charges, multiple counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault, burglary. But since his arrest in 2018, there's been little movement in the case until now. I'll get to that as an aside. When we typed in Oddi's name and location on the Truthfinder website, we were able to access all sorts of information, including his criminal history. He's faced charges as minor-ish traffic violations, and of course, as serious as the attempted murder charges he faces now. By the way, we actually use Truthfinder a lot to do research for our stories. Sometimes what you find in there, pretty shocking. Even typing in your own name, you might be surprised at what comes up. Truthfinder is one of the largest public record search services in the United States. You can use it to pull up registered sex offenders information in your area, which is super helpful for peace of mind. And with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. So if you're interested, right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Okay, so back to him. With Oddi, I mentioned there's been no activity. Well, it seems he plans to take a plea deal. He has a plea hearing set for October 10th. And the timing of that hearing is interesting, considering Sean Combs has just been arrested and charged, and we have been wondering if Oddi could play any role in Combs' case. I mean, all of a sudden, for there to be activity in his case that basically seemed like it was stalled out is interesting. Could he be a cooperating witness for the government in Sean Combs' case? Or could it have nothing to do with Sean Combs? Maybe it was in his legal best interest to take a deal given the weight of the evidence. We're not sure. But here's what we do know. His connection to Sean Combs. Now, if you've been following us here on Sidebar, you know that Jonathan Oddi had this long interview with law enforcement after his arrest, and he seemed eager to talk about anything and everything. And during that interview, he claimed, unprompted, that he was essentially Combs' sex slave. And as Sean Combs faces charges of racketeering conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, this is relevant. So to talk about this, and to really what we want to highlight is whether we should take anything that Oddi has to say in that interview seriously, I want to bring in right now Dr. Lillian Glass, a body language expert and communications consultant. Dr. Glass, so good to have you on. First of all, have you ever heard the term freak off before either this indictment or before Cassandra Ventura filed her lawsuit against Sean Combs back in November of 2023? This is Sean Combs' ex-girlfriend who basically started the ball rolling. Have you ever heard of it?
I never heard the term, but this could be a Diddy term, that he invented. But I definitely never heard it. But when you hear what's going on, it's quite shocking.
It is quite shocking and quite unique. So I am so happy to have you because I want to go into this interrogation. You tell me what you think. Let's start this off. Let's dive into Jonathan Oddi's interrogation.
Do you know Sean Combs?
Puff Daddy?
Yeah.
P. Diddy, whatever you call himself these days. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's part of what's called the Boule. The Boule is a branch of the Illuminati.
Okay.
And it's the black people.
Quick aside here, by the way, the Boule is a real thing. It's the senior leadership of Sigma Pi Phi fraternity. In our understanding, it is the oldest postgraduate fraternity founded by and for black men. And it's been rumored that Combs might be a member. Doesn't appear that he is. But Oddi, going back to him, he tells the investigators that he had multiple sexual encounters with Sean Combs and his then girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who I mentioned before. Remember, Cassie claimed in a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Sean Combs last fall that she was coerced into participating in what Combs called freak-offs, these sexual performances that involve drugs and male escorts.
I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard a lot of business, because what they would do is Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with speakers and stuff, and I was like a sex slave, okay? For them, that's what I was. That's all.
All right, Dr. Glass, what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, he leans forward. And so he has a secret to tell. He has something important to say. When people lean forward, that's one of the things they do. Also, his gestures match what he's saying when he gestures with his hand to the ear, like using the telephone, and then he leans back. He's very, very credible in terms of his body language. So he seems very solid. There's no hesitation in his tone. So in that respect, you see credibility.
Okay, so Cassie claims that Combs used his money and influence to abuse her, keep her from leaving the relationship. She claims that Combs would have male escorts brought in to his home or hotel rooms where these freak-off sessions would be set up. These elaborate setups that were reportedly filmed, complete with lighting, support staff, thousands of bottles of lubricant and baby oil. I went over that, what was alleged in the indictment. Now, Combs reportedly used these sessions for his own gratification, but also held onto the videos as a form of collateral against whoever might be featured on them, or that seems to be an allegation put forward. And that's what makes up the bulk of this indictment against him as he faces these charges, these federal charges. Now, Oddi claims to have participated in some of these orgies, these sex parties, and also says that he ended up with an STD.
I caught herpes, and I came back and I sued him for the herpes and won. But they did Mark Erebos and Ben Mercedes were his attorneys, okay? And Christopher Leon's here was my attorney. They asked me to turn in that, which was the video recording, and I did so. They gave it back to me accidentally, and it's possible, I threw everything out, it's possible I can produce a copy. The hip-hop agenda is an agenda to move drugs all over the United States. You need to involve the DEA. They move all the dope, okay, all the dope on private jets, which don't get screened by
customs,
by DEA,
okay.
Inside the United States. Okay, they move what's called high-grade powder MDMA. They move cocaine, and they move liquid cocaine in their bottles too. Okay, so they put the liquid cocaine in the bottles and they move it. I've seen the liquid cocaine, I've drank it myself, having sex with Diddy and Cassie. Okay, it's not good. He drinks it all the time.
Dr. Glass, what's your reaction to what Oddi is saying and his demeanor?
He's got a stream of consciousness situation going on and on and on, but he does sound credible. I don't see any deception when he's talking. You know, you hear an occasional but he's trying to remember certain things, but it's not anything that's not credible. So when you hear him talk, you have to listen.
What would be an indication of something that maybe he was hiding information, or he was maybe not being truthful? What would be some indicators?
He would look away. He would look down. He would fumble with his words. He would fumble with his actions. He would not be very solid in terms of how he communicates. His voice would be different. It would be a little shakier. It would be stammering. He doesn't have any of that. And so that leads you to think, is he credible?
And it's interesting that he's speaking with authorities here. He's not speaking to a friend who's on camera. Talking to authorities, does that change your analysis in terms of how people behave?
Yes, but he wants to let it all out. Usually when you're talking to authorities, you're more guarded. Your body language is tighter. He's not. He's fluid. He wants everything to come out. So that's very, very interesting.
And look, his interview was all over the place. He talked about how the U.S. is run by a cabal of rich people that want to rule the world. He talked about various agendas and conspiracy theories. He claims he filed a lawsuit against Combs, which he settled. We couldn't find any records of a civil claim, but
I've had a great life. I've settled $4.125 million with Diddy. Okay, but he's scared that I was an exposure.
I don't want to talk about Diddy right now. I want to talk about you. Help me understand.
Yeah, the officers conducting this interview are likely very, very confused because this was back in 2018, 5 years before Cassandra Ventura would file her lawsuit and Combs' alleged criminal enterprise would start to fall apart, according to prosecutors. So, Dr. Glass, looking back now at Oddi's statements, they don't seem quite as far-fetched, but you tell me, would potential testimony from Jonathan Oddi be credible?
I think at this point it would be very credible because he spoke about this in 2018. Had he done it now, you might question, well, it's out in the news, but nobody knew about this, and he kind of spills the beans. There's one thing when he is talking about the government and he's talking about all these conspiracy theories, allegedly, you see he's fidgeting with something with his hands. He's a little nervous about that. He's a little uncomfortable. So that's the only time you see him a little shaky in terms of his body language.
Dr. Glass, would you be called as a witness to testify at a trial? If there was a question of someone's credibility, would you be called as a witness as a body language expert?
Well, I have been in the past a behavioral expert, but it's up to the judge. And sometimes the judge doesn't allow it. And so one of the things I do is I work with the lawyers individually and I tell them what to ask and I analyze the trial, and that helps pretty well. So basically the lawyer does what I would have done on the stand.
Would you, and you don't have to share this, but would you help a legal team coach a witness in terms of how to present on the stand so that they're most credible?
Well, absolutely. However, the body doesn't lie. It comes
Right.
out. So I can coach for years. It may not work because the bottom line is there are little subtleties that come out. So you can be trained, but unless you are credible, the brain takes over. The autonomic nervous system takes over. So you do things that you don't even realize you're doing, licking your lips, shrugging, all kinds of things. So it's difficult. Although I have prepared in my career a lot of people for trial, how to come across, how to present themselves. And it's been quite successful in many instances. However, when you're talking about credibility, that's a whole different story.
Let me ask you about that real quick. I am not familiar with the mental health history of Jonathan Oddi, but when you say credible, you mean he believes he's telling the truth. This is his version of a truth. It might not actually be true. It's his view of something. It's his view of the world. It's his interpretation. So when you say credible, it's the way he perceives it. We don't know if it's actually true.
Well, what I'm looking at is body language, communication. Right. That's my narrow little road. And so when I'm looking at that, I see credible body language. Right. Now, whatever he's saying, what he believes, I don't know. I don't know what he thinks, what goes on in his mind, what kind of mental issues. Obviously, there must be something going on from a psychological point of view for him to even get involved in this type of lifestyle. However, when you look at how he presents himself to the authority figures, it does seem very solid. And that's what is very intriguing.
And by the way, before I go back to his credibility, could someone learn how to mask their body to make it look like they're credible and telling the truth when they're not?
Unless they're a sociopath, it's very difficult. He may be, who knows? But in most cases, we feel things, we see things. So in terms of credibility, it's not just what he believes, it's what he's putting out there that you believe. So if the jury believes, wait a minute, he sounds like he's telling the truth, or he seems like he's telling the truth, that's what it's all about. It's how do you come across to another person? Can you be trained in this? To a degree. And as I said, things come up and you can't fool Mother Nature, so to speak. It does happen.
Well, that's why I wanted to have you on, because a lot of people are looking to what he said and are saying he was telling the truth all those years ago. I mean, you know, I don't know exactly what's in his mind. I don't know what his experiences are, but you have to listen to what he said, given the allegations now. And by the way, his credibility could be backed up by the fact that he's not the only one making claims like this, because in a lawsuit against Sean Combs and several alleged co-conspirators, there was one filed by music producer Rodney Little Rod Jones. And his legal counsel writes in this complaint, they were made aware of this through complaints made by Cassie Ventura and the lawsuit by former Diddy sex worker Jonathan Oddi. So that makes it interesting that Jones has referenced him. Now, he might have seen this video. This video obviously came before Jones' lawsuit, but it could be very well true that Oddi played some sort of role in this. I just think it's fascinating, and I wanted your point of view, your expertise to break down Jonathan Oddi's body language. So you believe he's credible. We will see where this goes. Interesting if he takes a deal. Don't know if it's connected to the Sean Combs case, but again, as I always say with this, we will wait and see. Dr. Lillian Glass, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.